The world watched as Riyadh, Saudi Arabia became the stage for a historic meeting. Top diplomats from the United States and Russia convened on February 18, 2025. This high-level meeting marked a significant development in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. It was the first such gathering since Russia's invasion of Ukraine nearly 3 years ago. The talks, shrouded in anticipation and uncertainty, aimed to address the escalating tensions between the two global powers. The meeting represented a potential turning point in the conflict. The presence of key figures from both sides underscored the gravity of the situation. The air was thick with anticipation as diplomats and world leaders awaited the outcome. The talks held the promise of a diplomatic resolution. They also carried the weight of potential setbacks. The world held its breath, hoping for a breakthrough. This meeting marked a new chapter in the complex relationship between the US and Russia. It signaled a potential shift in the geopolitical landscape. The stakes were high and the world was watching. The meeting in Riyadh brought together a formidable lineup of diplomatic heavyweights. Representing the United States were Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Middle East Envoy Steve Witkoff. Their Russian counterparts included Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Yuri Ushakov, President Putin's foreign policy advisor. The presence of such high-ranking officials underscored the significance of the talks. Each individual brought a wealth of experience and expertise to the table. The weight of their respective nations' interests rested on their shoulders. Saudi Arabia, the host nation, played a pivotal role in facilitating the dialogue. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud and National Security Advisor Mossad bin Mohammed Al Ayban represented the kingdom's interests. Their presence highlighted Saudi Arabia's growing influence on the global stage. Notably absent from the meeting were any representatives from Ukraine. This absence raised concerns about the potential for a deal being struck without Kiev's input. Ukraine's absence cast a long shadow over the proceedings. The US-Russia talks in Riyadh centered around three primary objectives. The first objective involved restoring full diplomatic staffing at both countries' embassies. This step aimed to rebuild diplomatic channels that had been severed or strained since the Ukraine conflict began. Secondly, the two sides agreed to establish a high-level team. This team's mandate was to support and facilitate peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. This move signaled a commitment to finding a diplomatic solution to the ongoing conflict. Finally, the US and Russia expressed a willingness to explore closer economic cooperation. This objective aimed to identify areas of mutual economic interest. It signaled a potential thawing of relations between the two countries. These objectives, while ambitious, represented concrete steps towards de-escalation. They offered a glimmer of hope in what had been a bleak and uncertain period. The success of these objectives, however, remained to be seen. The Riyadh meeting highlighted a notable shift in US foreign policy under President Trump. Previous administrations, particularly under President Biden, had pursued a policy of isolating Russia on the world stage. Trump, however, appeared to be charting a different course. Trump's decision to engage with Russia directly, even amidst the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, signaled a departure from the past. This shift has been met with mixed reactions both domestically and internationally. Critics argue that Trump's approach risks emboldening Russia and undermining US credibility. Supporters, on the other hand, contend that dialogue is essential for managing complex geopolitical challenges. The long-term implications of Trump's foreign policy shift remain to be seen. However, the Riyadh meeting suggests a potential realignment of global power dynamics. Section 5. Kiev's concerns. Ukraine's absence casts a shadow. Ukraine reacted to the US-Russia talks in Riyadh with a mixture of apprehension and disappointment. President Zelensky, who had originally planned to visit Saudi Arabia himself, postponed his trip in protest of Ukraine's exclusion from the talks. Zelensky expressed concern that any agreements reached without Ukraine's direct involvement would not be in the country's best interest. He emphasized the need for Ukraine to be a full participant in any negotiations concerning its future. Ukraine's absence from the Riyadh talks underscored the complexities of the conflict. It highlighted the challenges of finding a resolution that satisfies all parties involved. Zelensky rescheduled his visit to Saudi Arabia for March 10th. He aims to make Ukraine's position clear and ensure that its voice is heard. Section 6. Allies on edge: European anxieties and unity. tested. The US-Russia talks in Riyadh also sparked anxieties among European allies. Many expressed concern about being sidelined in crucial discussions about the future of European security. The lack of European representation at the talks raised questions about transatlantic unity. France, in particular, voiced its displeasure. Paris convened an emergency meeting with EU countries and the UK to discuss the situation. European leaders sought to present a united front and reaffirm their commitment to a Ukraine-led peace process. The Riyadh talks have exposed potential cracks in the transatlantic alliance. They have highlighted the need for greater coordination and communication between the US and its European partners. The talks serve as a reminder of the delicate balance of power in Europe. They underscore the need for continued dialogue and cooperation to address shared security concerns. Section 7. Towards a Summit. The potential for a Trump-Putin meeting. One of the key outcomes of the Riyadh meeting was the potential for a future summit between President Trump and President Putin. While no date has been set, sources suggest that such a meeting could take place in the coming weeks. A Trump-Putin summit would be a highly anticipated event. It could have significant implications for US-Russia relations and the future of the Ukraine conflict. The world would be watching closely for any signs of progress or setbacks. However, such a summit is not without its risks. Critics argue that meeting with Putin would legitimize his actions in Ukraine and embolden him further. They urge caution and emphasize the need for concrete deliverables from any such meeting. Despite the risks, the possibility of a Trump-Putin summit offers a glimmer of hope. It suggests that dialogue, however difficult, remains a possibility in even the most challenging of circumstances. Section 8. The conflict continues. A grim reality amidst diplomacy. Even as diplomats met in Riyadh, the conflict in Ukraine continued unabated. Russian forces launched fresh attacks, including drone strikes that caused injuries and damage. The violence served as a stark reminder of the human cost of the conflict. The ongoing fighting underscored the urgency of finding a peaceful resolution. It highlighted the need for all parties to de-escalate tensions and engage in good faith negotiations. The international community condemned the continued violence. There were renewed calls for a ceasefire and a return to dialogue. The situation in Ukraine remains dire. The Riyadh talks, while a positive step, have not yet translated into concrete action on the ground. The need for peace remains as urgent as ever. Section 9. Saudi Arabia's Gambit, the Kingdom's Diplomatic Ascent. By hosting the US-Russia talks, Saudi Arabia positioned itself as a key diplomatic player in the Ukraine conflict. This move aligns with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's ambition to elevate the kingdom's standing on the world stage. Saudi Arabia has maintained ties with both Russia and the United States throughout the conflict. This neutrality has allowed the kingdom to play a unique mediating role. The success of the Riyadh talks has bolstered Saudi Arabia's diplomatic credentials. It has showcased the kingdom's ability to convene high-level meetings and facilitate dialogue between global powers. Saudi Arabia's role in the Ukraine conflict highlights the shifting geopolitical landscape. It underscores the growing influence of regional powers in international affairs.